What happens when America's sweetheart meets her match in a television confrontation that nobody saw coming? The morning started like any other on the Today with Jenna and Friends show, but within minutes, the studio atmosphere shifted from warm and welcoming to ice-cold tension that you could cut with a knife. Kelly Clarkson, known for her bubbly personality and genuine warmth, found herself in the middle of a heated exchange that left viewers stunned and the show's crew scrambling. Before we dive into this explosive moment that had social media buzzing for days, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below with your thoughts on what you think really happened here. Jenna Bush Hager welcomed Kelly onto the familiar orange couch with her trademark enthusiasm. But something felt different from the very beginning. The energy in the studio seemed charged, like the air before a thunderstorm. As Kelly settled into her seat, there was a noticeable shift in her usual demeanor. Gone was the relaxed, laugh Kelly that audiences had come to love. Instead, she sat with a slight tension in her shoulders, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Kelly, it's so wonderful to have you back on the show," Jenna began, her voice carrying its usual warmth. "I know our viewers are excited to hear about your latest projects, and of course, we have to talk about some of the recent headlines surrounding your personal life." The moment those words left Jenna's mouth, Kelly's expression changed subtly. Her smile became more guarded, and she shifted slightly in her seat. "Thank you for having me, Jenna. I'm always happy to be here and talk about my music and my show. That's what I'm really passionate about right now." There was something in Kelly's tone, a slight edge that suggested she was drawing boundaries early in the conversation. Jenna, either not picking up on the subtle warning or choosing to ignore it, pressed forward with her predetermined line of questioning. "Well, we definitely want to hear about all of that," Jenna replied. "But our audience is also curious about your personal journey. You've been so open about your struggles, and I think people really connect with your authenticity. Can we talk about how you've been handling all the changes in your life lately?" Kelly's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Jenna, I appreciate the interest, but I'd really prefer to focus on my work today. I have some exciting projects coming up that I think your viewers would love to hear about." The deflection was polite but firm. However, Jenna seemed determined to steer the conversation toward more personal territory. "Of course, and we'll get to all of that. But Kelly, you've always been someone who wears her heart on her sleeve. Your fans have been through this journey with you, and I think they're genuinely concerned and want to know how you're doing personally." "My fans know how I'm doing because I share what I choose to share," Kelly responded, her voice maintaining its professional tone, but with an underlying firmness that hadn't been there moments before. "I'm grateful for their support, but there are boundaries and I hope everyone can respect that." The tension in the studio was becoming palpable. Camera operators exchanged glances and production assistants shifted nervously. This wasn't the friendly, easygoing interview that everyone had expected. Jenna, perhaps sensing the growing tension but unwilling to back down, made what would prove to be a critical mistake. "I completely understand wanting privacy, Kelly. But when you're in the public eye, especially when you've been so open in the past, people feel invested in your story. They want to support you through the difficult times, just like they celebrated with you during the good times." Kelly's eyes flashed, and for the first time, her media-trained composure cracked slightly. "Jenna, I've been nothing but gracious about sharing my life with the public. But there's a difference between sharing and being exploited. I came here today to talk about my music, my television show, and the projects I'm passionate about. I didn't come here to be psychoanalyzed or to have my personal life dissected for entertainment." The word exploited hung in the air like a challenge. Jenna's eyebrows rose slightly, and there was a momentary pause as she processed what Kelly had just said. The accusation was clear, even if it wasn't stated directly. Kelly was suggesting that the line of questioning was crossing from journalism into something more problematic. "Kelly, that's not what we're trying to do here at all," Jenna responded, her voice taking on a slightly defensive tone. "We're simply trying to have an honest conversation. Our viewers tune in because they want authentic moments, real connections. That's what this show has always been about." "Authentic moments," Kelly repeated, her voice carrying a note of skepticism. "Is that what we're calling it now? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels more like I'm being pushed to discuss things that I've made clear I don't want to discuss." On national television, the confrontation was escalating, and everyone in the studio could feel it. This was no longer a friendly morning show interview. It had become something much more uncomfortable, a public disagreement between two women who were supposed to be on the same side. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of the growing tension. Jenna took a deep breath, clearly trying to regain control of the situation. Kelly, I think. Jenna's face flushed slightly and her professional composure wavered for just a moment. She wasn't used to being challenged so directly on her own show, especially not by someone she considered a friend. Kelly, I feel like you're being a bit unfair here. This is a morning show. We talk about life. We talk about real things. That's what our audience expects. Unfair. Kelly's voice rose just a notch, enough to make the sound engineers adjust their levels. Jenna, what's unfair is coming into an interview with one set of expectations and having the host completely ignore your clearly stated boundaries. I told you I wanted to focus on my work, and you've spent the last 10 minutes trying to get me to open up about personal matters that I've already addressed in other forums when I chose to do so. The mention of other forums was a subtle dig, suggesting that Kelly had been more cooperative with other interviewers who had respected her wishes. Jenna caught the implication immediately, and her defensive instincts kicked in. Kelly, I think you're overreacting, Jenna said, and the moment those words left her mouth, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. We're just trying to connect with you as a person, not just as a celebrity. Our viewers want to know the real Kelly Clarkson. Overreacting. Kelly's eyes widened, and for the first time, her voice carried genuine anger rather than professional frustration. Did you just tell me that I'm overreacting to having my clearly stated boundaries ignored? And then you followed that up by suggesting that the version of me that wants to maintain some privacy isn't the real me. The studio was dead silent now. Even the usually bustling background activity had stopped as everyone focused on the unfolding drama. This was no longer just a tense interview. It was becoming a full-blown confrontation, and everyone present knew they were witnessing something extraordinary. Jenna realized she had made a mistake with her choice of words. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. That's not what I meant, and you know it. I'm saying that your fans care about you as a whole person. They've been through your journey with you. The good times and the challenging times. They want to support you. Don't you dare speak for my fans. Kelly shot back, her media training completely abandoned now. My fans support me because I've been honest with them about what I choose to share. They don't expect me to bare my soul every time I sit down for an interview. And they certainly don't expect me to be bullied into discussing things I'm not comfortable with. The word bullied hit like a lightning bolt. Jenna's jaw dropped slightly, and she stared at Kelly in apparent shock. The accusation was serious and public, and there was no taking it back now. Bullied. Jenna's voice was tight with indignation. Kelly, that's completely out of line. Nobody is bullying you here. This is a conversation between friends, or at least I thought it was. Friends respect each other's boundaries, Jenna. Kelly replied coldly. Friends don't keep pushing when someone has made it clear they're uncomfortable. And friends certainly don't dismiss someone's concerns as overreacting when they're trying to maintain their dignity and privacy. The exchange had moved beyond professional disagreement into something much more personal. These two women, who had shared laughs and seemingly genuine moments in previous interactions, were now facing off in a battle of wills that neither seemed willing to lose. Jenna took a breath, clearly struggling to regain control of both her emotions and her show. Kelly, I think we're both getting a little heated here. Maybe we should take a step back and remember that we're both professionals here trying to do our jobs. You're absolutely right about one thing, Kelly said, her voice steady but ice cold. We are professionals, and as a professional, I came here with clear expectations about what I was willing to discuss. As a professional, I've tried to redirect this conversation multiple times. And as a professional, I'm telling you right now that if you can't respect the boundaries I've set, then we have a problem. The ultimatum was clear. Kelly wasn't backing down, and she was putting Jenna in a position where she would have to choose between pursuing her line of questioning or respecting Kelly's wishes. The entire studio held its breath, waiting to see how Jenna would respond. Jenna looked directly into Kelly's eyes, and what she said next would determine whether this interview could be salvaged or whether it would spiral completely out of control. Kelly, with all due respect, you knew what kind of show this was when you agreed to come on. We've never been just a promotional platform. We talk about real life, real struggles, real triumphs. That's what makes us different. Kelly's face went through a series of expressions from disbelief to anger to something that looked almost like hurt. So, you're saying that unless I'm willing to discuss my personal trauma for your audience's entertainment, I'm not being real enough for your show. That's not what I'm saying at all, Jenna protested. But Kelly was already shaking her head. No, Jenna, I think that's exactly what you're saying. You're saying that my music, my television show, my charitable work, my professional accomplishments, none of that is real enough or interesting enough unless it comes packaged with personal pain and private struggles. The accusation hung heavy in the air. Kelly had essentially accused Jenna and the show of exploiting personal pain for ratings, and there was no walking back from that kind of statement. Jenna's face hard. The studio audience, who had come expecting a lighthearted morning show experience, sat in stunned silence as they witnessed what was quickly becoming one of the most uncomfortable television moments in recent memory. Kelly leaned forward in her chair, her eyes locked on Jenna with an intensity that made everyone in the room acutely aware that this situation was spiraling beyond anyone's control. "You know what, Jenna?" Kelly began, her voice quiet, but carrying a dangerous edge. "Let me be vulnerable and authentic for you right now. I'm a human being who has been through some incredibly difficult experiences. And I've shared those experiences when I felt ready and when I felt it would help others. But I'm also a professional who has built a career on my talent, my work ethic, and my ability to connect with people through my art. The fact that you seem to think those things aren't enough, unless they come with a side of personal trauma, is exactly what's wrong with this industry." Jenna's face had gone from defensive to something approaching shock. She clearly hadn't expected Kelly to turn the tables so completely, to make this about the broader issues of celebrity culture and media exploitation, rather than just their personal disagreement. "Kelly, that's not fair," Jenna said. But her voice lacked the conviction it had carried earlier. "You're making this about something much bigger than what's actually happening here." "Am I?" Kelly challenged. "Because from where I'm sitting, this is exactly what's happening here. You've decided that my music, my television show that employs hundreds of people, my charitable foundation that helps families in need, none of that is interesting enough for your audience, unless I also give you access to my personal pain. And when I politely declined to go there, you told me I was overreacting and suggested I wasn't being real enough." The indictment was devastating, and Jenna found herself in the uncomfortable position of having to defend not just her interview style, but the entire approach of personality-driven morning television. "Kelly, you're twisting this completely out of proportion. Morning television has always been about connecting with people on a personal level. That's what our viewers want." "Your viewers want," Kelly repeated, standing up from her chair with a fluid motion that caught everyone off guard. "Let me ask you something, Jenna. When you go home tonight, are you going to discuss your marriage problems on television tomorrow? Are you going to talk about any family struggles or personal challenges you might be facing? Or is that different because you're the host and not the guest?" The question hit like a physical blow. Jenna's mouth opened as if to respond, but no words came out immediately. Kelly had turned the tables completely, challenging not just the specific interaction, but the entire power dynamic that existed between host and guest in these situations. "Aye, that's different," Jenna finally managed to say, but even as the words left her mouth, they sounded weak and unconvincing. "Who's it?" Kelly pressed, taking a step closer to where Jenna sat. "Is it different because you get to ask the questions instead of answer them? Is it different because you get to decide what's appropriate to discuss about someone else's life while keeping your own private matters off limits?" The studio had become so quiet that the hum of the air conditioning seemed loud. Camera operators continued filming, but several crew members looked like they wanted to intervene somehow, though none of them knew exactly what they could do to defuse the situation. Jenna struggled to regain her footing in the conversation. "Kelly, you agreed to come on this show knowing what kind of program it is. We've never misrepresented what we do here." "You're right about one thing," Kelly said, her voice rising for the first time since she'd stood up. "I did agree to come on this show. I agreed to promote my work, to talk about my projects, to connect with your audience about the things I'm passionate about professionally. I did not agree to be ambushed about personal matters that I've already made clear I'm not comfortable discussing in this format." "Ambushed?" Jenna's voice cracked slightly. "Kelly, asking about your personal life is not an ambush. It's a normal part of these interviews." "Normal for who?" Kelly demanded. "Normal for the host who gets to go home and keep her private life private. Normal for the producers who get to exploit other people's pain for ratings while keeping their own struggles out of the spotlight. Or normal for the guests who are expected to bare their souls for your entertainment while you judge whether they're being real enough, or authentic enough, or vulnerable enough." Each question was like a hammer blow, and Jenna found herself completely unprepared for the philosophical and ethical challenge that Kelly was presenting. This had moved far beyond a simple disagreement about interview boundaries into a fundamental questioning of the entire morning show format. "Kelly, I think you're being incredibly unfair right now," Jenna said, her own voice beginning to show strain. "We're not exploiting anyone. We're providing a platform for people to share their stories and connect with our audience." "A platform," Kelly repeated, shaking her head in apparent disgust. "You're providing a platform that you control, where you set the terms, where you decide what's appropriate to discuss about other people's lives while maintaining complete control over your own narrative. And when someone tries to set boundaries, you tell them they're overreacting and not being authentic enough." Kelly began moving toward the edge of the interview area, and everyone in the studio suddenly realized that she might actually be preparing to leave. The thought sent a ripple of panic through the production team, but no one seemed to know how to handle the situation. "Kelly, please don't leave," Jenna said, standing up herself now. "Let's just take a breath and find a way to move forward here. We can talk about your music, your show, whatever you want to discuss." Kelly stopped and turned back to face Jenna. And when she spoke, her voice was calm, but final. "Jenna, the time to respect what I wanted to discuss was..." The moment stretched on, heavy with the weight of everything that had been said and everything that could no longer be taken back. Jenna looked desperately around the studio, as if hoping someone would step in with a solution. But the crew members all seemed frozen in place, uncertain whether they should keep filming or try to intervene in some way. "Kelly, I'm sorry if you feel like we crossed a line," Jenna said, her voice smaller now, less confident than it had been throughout the entire interview. "That was never our intention. We really do respect you and your work." Kelly paused in her movement toward the exit and turned back one final time. When she spoke, her voice carried a sadness that hadn't been there during the height of their confrontation. "Jenna, the road to exploitation is paved with good intentions. I don't think you woke up this morning planning to disrespect me or dismiss my boundaries, but that's exactly what happened here. And the fact that it wasn't intentional doesn't make it acceptable." "Kelly, please," Jenna pleaded, taking a step toward her. "We can fix this. We can start over. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about." "No, Jenna, we can't," Kelly replied firmly. "Because the damage is already done. I made it crystal clear multiple times what I was and wasn't comfortable discussing. And instead of respecting that, you questioned my motives, dismissed my concerns, and suggested that maintaining my privacy somehow made me less authentic or less real. You can't start over from that." The studio audience sat in complete silence, many of them looking uncomfortable, witnessing such a raw and personal confrontation. This was far from the light entertainment they had expected when they arrived that morning. Kelly began walking toward the studio exit again. But Jenna wasn't ready to give up. "Kelly, you're being unreasonable. This is how these interviews work. Everyone knows that you can't come on a talk show and expect to only talk about the things that make you look good." Those words stopped Kelly dead in her tracks. She turned around slowly, and when she looked at Jenna, her expression had shifted from frustrated to genuinely angry. "Make me look good. Is that what you think this is about? You think I'm trying to control my image by not wanting to discuss personal matters that have nothing to do with why I'm here today. I think you're being selective about what you want to share," Jenna replied, her own frustration finally boiling over. "And I think that's not fair to our audience who tune in expecting honest, open conversations." "Selective," Kelly repeated, shaking her head in apparent disbelief. "Jenna, everyone is selective about what they share. You're selective about what you share about your personal life. Your producers are selective about what they share about their personal lives. But somehow when I'm selective about what I share, that makes me dishonest and inauthentic." "That's not what I said," Jenna protested. "It's exactly what you said," Kelly shot back. "You said I was being unreasonable for wanting to control what we discussed. You suggested that talking only about things that make me look good somehow wasn't fair to your audience. Well, let me tell you what's not fair to your audience, Jenna. What's not fair is creating a culture where people are afraid to come on television because they know they'll be pushed and prodded and pressured to discuss things they're not ready to discuss." Kelly's voice had risen again, and her words carried the weight of someone who was speaking not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever felt exploited or manipulated in similar situations. What's not fair to your audience is creating a standard where someone's professional accomplishments aren't enough unless they come packaged with personal trauma. What's not fair is making people choose between maintaining their dignity and being labeled as difficult or uncooperative. Jenna's face was flushed now, and she looked around the studio desperately. "Kelly, You're making this about something much bigger than what actually happened here today. Am I? Kelly demanded. Or am I finally calling out something that's been happening in this industry for years? How many people have sat in that chair and been made to feel like they had to choose between their privacy and being seen as cooperative? How many people have walked away from interviews like this feeling violated and exploited, but were afraid to speak up because they didn't want to be labeled as difficult? The questions hung in the air like accusations, and everyone in the studio knew that Kelly was touching on issues that went far beyond this single interview. She was challenging an entire system, an entire approach to celebrity journalism that had been accepted as normal for decades. I came here today as a professional to discuss my professional work, Kelly continued, her voice steady and clear. I was polite. I was respectful. And I tried multiple times to redirect our conversation in a way that would be productive for both of us. Instead of respecting that, you pushed and pushed and pushed until we ended up here. Kelly looked around the studio, taking in the cameras, the crew members, the stunned audience members. This is what happens when someone finally says no and means it. This is what happens when someone refuses to be bullied into discussing things they're not comfortable with. And if that makes me difficult or unreasonable in your eyes, then I'll wear that label proudly. With that, Kelly turned toward the exit one final time. But before she could take more than a few steps, Jenna called out desperately. Kelly, wait. If you leave like this, it's going to look terrible for both of us. Can't we find some way to end this on a better note? Kelly stopped but didn't turn around. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but carried clearly throughout the silent studio. Jenna, you had multiple opportunities to end this on a better note. You had chances to respect my boundaries, to listen when I told you what I was comfortable discussing, to treat me with the basic professional courtesy that you would want for yourself. You chose not to take any of those opportunities. So no, we can't end this on a better note because the note was set by your choices, not mine. And with that, Kelly Clarkson walked off the set of Today with Jenna and friends.